Men of Morehouse, you are surrounded by a community of people who have helped you arrive at this sacred place and on this sacred day. On behalf of the 8 generations of my family who have been in this country, we're going to put a little fuel in your bus. Now, I've got the alumni over there, and this is a challenge to you, alumni. This is my class, 2019. And my family is making a grant to eliminate their student loans. Now, I know my class will make sure they pay this forward. And I want my class to look at these alumnus, these beautiful Morehouse brothers, and let's make sure every class has the same opportunity going forward. Because we are enough to take care of our own community. We are enough to ensure we have all the opportunities of the American dream. And we will show it to each other through our actions and through our words and through our deeds.
So my friend Robert F. Smith, on some levels, I wasn't surprised when I heard what you did, because I've known you to be just enormously generous. Whenever I have called to ask for anything, you, whether it's paying for somebody's funeral, whether it's a scholarship, whether it's a transformational gift to Carnegie Hall, to Cornell, to increase the numbers of Black and brown engineers in this country, you've always been there as a philanthropist. But this, even by Robert F. Smith standards, was really remarkable. So how did you come to decide to do this, to erase the student debt of an entire graduating class of Morehouse College?
Besides the fact you called me and told me you're going to do matching grants, was that a dream, or was that, this is the Ford Foundation. You didn't know I was going to spring that on you.
Yes, no, I didn't.
Which is why we love each other. The dynamic of being in this country, being African American and African American male in this country, as you know, is a complex one. You know, I talk in my speech about I'm the first generation in my family to have all my rights in this country. I was born in 1962, Civil Rights Act 1965, and I think about that probably more often than I should have to. And when I have a chance to liberate the human spirit, I know there's no greater feeling. And many people who are here, the work that you do actually liberates the human spirit in different ways. And I am sitting there thinking, I went to Morehouse a year before, was presented with a wonderful award, and I made a grant and a gift to, in essence, create a park, tear down this building that was dilapidated, that was owned by another person who, for whatever reason, wanted those students to see that dilapidated building every day. And I said, no, we're going to eliminate that, and we're going to give the students an opportunity to create a park. They can design it, and it'll be a beautiful place. And then you start to feel, again, the spirit of these beautiful men at Morehouse. And I thought about what could I do that actually changes their lives in a way that liberates their spirits. The dynamic of freeing them and their families.
Because you're paying for the parents who also had
Correct.
student debt.
Correct. The federal student loans that the parents have, the dynamic of freeing and liberating 400 families, that now these young people can think about, how do I now go change my community? How do I change my people? How do I change my opportunity in America? That's what America is about to me, to have an opportunity to make a change. But if you are so burdened in certain ways, lack of rights in participating in the capital system, lack of rights to participate in education, the lack of an opportunity to actually participate in healthcare because you have a certain melanin in your skin, makes no sense. It's just wrong. And so when you have a chance to change that, if you don't do it, that's just wrong. So for me, that's what it was about. And I said, I thought about what I know these 400 men will do now that they no longer have that financial burden that frankly is disproportionate to other students who are graduating. And typically their jobs have a disproportionate pay relative to others. I know they will pay that forward. And what's so interesting, I'm now starting to see the ripples of hope and action in the communities where people are doing similar things. Some it's paying off, lunch loans. And for folks like my friend Sandy and Joan Weil, they said, let's underwrite Cornell Medical School. So it is free. Now we just need to make sure there's equal opportunity for people to participate in those sort of programs like Cornell Medical. That's what I think about when I see now the importance of gifts like that to provide leadership and to provide structure. The second part of this thing, which I think is important, is we put together a fantastic team with Morehouse, Skadden Arps, a good friend of mine who is a brilliant man, Fred Goldberg, and my team to say, how do you do this and create a model that you can now roll out and propagate, which is what we've now done. And now we can go to first we're starting with every HBCU and say, guess what? You can now create a very efficient model for donors to alleviate the burden of those students in a very tax-efficient way for the donors and for the students. And so that model is now being rolled out. So, and every school can now embrace that. I think I'm in the world of software, and part of the world I live in is a world of disruption. And this is a disruptive opportunity to make a change at scale in the country that needs that change for our students.
And how do you...
Thanks.
It has raised some questions, though, about the role of private capital, private philanthropy,
Right.
in solving what is a severe public policy challenge.
Right.
How do you square the role of philanthropy with solving the large problem that you have identified, which is the fact that we will soon have more student loan debt than we have mortgage debt?
Right, which is atrocious. It's a catastrophe in the way that we're running our financial system as it relates to these young people's opportunities at a time when they have to have, in my view, more opportunity to innovate in order to compete globally. Because that's the world I live in has some massive challenges in the war on talent, that we have to get the brightest minds and the greatest minds in this country, working on solving these problems and innovating on these technological platforms that I get a chance to work with every single day. So to a great extent, the way I like to think of philanthropy, the love of mankind. Our job as private philanthropists is to think about how we do liberate our people to actually have the chance to contribute to society in very positive ways. I hope part of my class of 2019, I hope a quarter of them become brilliant chemical engineers, because I know a few of those. I hope a quarter of them become teachers who think about how do I now deliver software and computer science to the masses of children in America, especially communities that they come from who don't have access to that. I hope a quarter of them actually decide to become doctors, to actually take care of the disparity in health initiatives for African Americans, and I hope a quarter of them become politicians. Because I hope that quarter looks at this and says, we need to make systemic change at scale that you can only do at the government level, or if you have, massive amounts of capital that like you control.
Exactly.
I'm not
So,
gonna let that go.
so Robert F. Smith. So, as a business leader, a philanthropist, what's your message to people who see you and are inspired and believe in the possibility in this country of someone of your humble means? What's your message to those people?
It is a simple message. It is a message of you are enough. You are enough to become the person who you want to become and make the changes that matter to you. You have to make sure all your actions are consistent with that. Because don't say, oh, I want to be a scientist, but you don't study science, or you're not intellectually curious in that context. But if you want to be that person, you are enough to find the resources to drive, that's what America's about, to drive yourself into that position to now make the difference that you want to make. That's what I hope to leave as an inspirational legacy for any child who grew up in a town, in a neighborhood. I didn't grow up around any engineers, but yet I became a chemical engineer. And it took study and diligence and effort and focus, and I didn't get to go to every party on Friday and Saturday nights. But I enjoyed the process of discovery. I enjoyed the process of learning. And as I try to teach everyone that I get experience with in my kids, the joy of figuring things out is one of the greatest joys that I've had in my life. And I hope that these young people have a chance to experience that same joy and know that they are enough to create outcomes that fit the world that they want to live in, as opposed to the world they might be living in.
One of the reasons, you are admired in a lot of corners, but one of the reasons I admire you and a lot of others do is because, according to Forbes magazine, you're the richest black man in America. That's not why I love you. But I admire
I've been recently
you.
more loved from that, from what I understand.
It's amazing how love
I
comes
know,
away
right?
when.
Yeah. My jokes are even funnier now. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you, though, have a real consciousness and have fully embraced your role as a prominent African-American businessman and philanthropist, and your consciousness around the issues related to African-Americans, whether it be education. I think you were the biggest donor to the new museum at the Smithsonian, and there are so many places where African-American narratives, heritage, history are memorialized, where you have given catalytic gifts. As an African-American who lives with a huge amount of privilege, do you still experience the kind of racism that many African-American men experience? Or are you able to actually, because of your enormous wealth, be insulated from some of those experiences?
The short answer is I still experience it. It is less frequent because I have less interaction as a result of, as you know, at some point in time you end up in a world that is a little smaller in that context. I would, and I still do experience it, what I call the randomness of it, when I'm out with, my wife or kids, and we're just being randomly living. And I experience it institutionally, absolutely. I still feel that dynamic. I have one of the more successful private equity firms in the world.
Absolutely, one of the largest and most successful, thank you very much.
And one of the lowest loss ratios, but yet there are still, that's important, but there are still certain pension plans that I go to, and they still don't fund us. And I look at that and I say, there's no reason you shouldn't be funding us, except that you've got some issue and some bias. And there was actually a report that came out about that.
Indeed.
And which troubles me because, You know, if I am a teacher or I'm a firefighter or I'm a policeman and my pension fund is being managed by somebody who isn't putting me to really what is the access to the fourth industrial revolution, which is enterprise software, I would be upset, okay? And it's conscious, unconscious bias, whatever it might be. It is inhibiting an opportunity for, my parents are both teachers, for them to have a more productive pension. That's a problem. And, you know, I call it out as often as I can, but I know my real responsibility is to deliver to those pensioners. 50% of the teachers, firefighters, and police officers actually have exposure to our funds. And I'm proud to say we've never lost $1 of institutional capital, right? And I look at that.
There are a lot who can't say
I know there's a lot who can't say that. Knock wood, and we'll continue to work hard, and who knows what might happen to you. But to me, that's an important part of, you know, call it that legacy of purpose. My primary purpose in that context is to run the best private equity firm that I can that delivers back to these millions of pensioners. From that, I can deliver philanthropic gifts that are meaningful at scale. And that's really how I think about it. And I encounter racism all the time along the way. But Maya Angelou has a son by the name of Guy Johnson, and I like the way he states, he says, you know, racism is like gravity. You can't spend too much time thinking about it. You just got to keep moving.
That's right. That's right.
And that's what I do.
Right. Well, and that's part of your success. So last question is Carnegie Hall.
Yes.
So you are the chairman of Carnegie Hall, and you have been an extraordinary chairman, and I can say that as a member of your board,
Yes.
that you have truly been transformational at Carnegie Hall.
Thank you.
For you, what is the vision you have for Carnegie Hall?
Right. The vision is Carnegie Hall, I like to say, has 4 stages, 3 in the building and 1 outside. Okay? And what outside, what I mean by every stage is out there. Anytime there's a child who is in need of music, or frankly, a mother with a child who is in need of an uplift in the form of music or our lullaby programs, Carnegie Hall has a wonderful role to play. It is a spectacular performance hall, the best in the world. We have the ability to attract the best musicians, and we have the ability to attract the best programming. One of our programs is the Link Up program. We get to 600,000 school kids every single year to bring music education into their schools by partnering with over 100 orchestras. Okay? Thinking about systemic implementation of putting music back into the hearts and souls of mankind is a big part of how I think about the vision of Carnegie Hall. And Clive Gillinson, as you know, very much, he and I work together on what's the architecture of making that happen. And so, again, I get to work in a beautiful world of enterprise software, which is scale, and deliver that organizational design and capacity in a world that brings music to the world. My father went to school on a band scholarship, ended up with a doctorate degree, but every year he would basically conduct the local orchestra, because that was one of the greatest highlights of his year. And I remember how that elevated his soul, and I know how music can elevate people's souls. To tie it back into my business, at the end of the day, I've got now, call it 300 plus executives, and when I do a survey every year, senior executives of the portfolio companies, and how many of them played music or still play music, between 2/3 and 80% raise their hand every single year. So I know there's a causal connection. And so we have to get music back into the lives of our people, all of our people, because I think that harmony makes a better world to live in.
Well, Robert F. Smith, you make a better world for us all to live in. Please join me in thanking Robert F. Smith.